But with that being said, we're going to jump right into the presentation. So yeah, welcome to the Make It Happen Multifamily webinar series. Obviously, we've already been talking to our SEC attorney guest tonight, Nick Moore. And we're going to be talking about different types of syndications, ways to structure deals, not just syndications, but several different ways you can do it. But we are going to get into the nitty gritty about 506Bs and 506Cs. So real quick, who are we? Lee and I
are Green Forest Capital.
Yeah.
And we are multifamily real estate syndicators. We have accumulated since 2019 when we began this wonderful venture of multifamily investing, 50 million in assets. We've done that in 506B and 506C syndications. We also occasionally do joint ventures on the right deals. We are also the founders of Make It Happen Multifamily, which is why you're here today. That is our educational group. We also have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. We do live events every month where we tour properties with owners. We'd love for you to come attend any of our in-person events here in St. Louis, as well as our, live webinars here. And we do currently have one project under contract that we're raising money for right now. Nick is actually the SEC attorney that put together all of the documents, and it is a 506C, so I can publicly talk about that deal to anyone. So it is, and we will post a link to the webinar we will be hosting tomorrow at the same time to review that deal. So if you're interested in investing passively into a multifamily real estate syndication in Atlanta, please come and attend the webinar and you'll learn more about it tomorrow.
Last plug, our next in-person event for the Make It Happen Multifamily group is on September 28th, Thursday. It's going to be tours and pours of 2200 LaSalle Street with Sam Chimento. It's going to be a great event, so I hope we can see you guys there, those of you that are local to St. Louis. And if you want to travel, then that would be awesome.
Yeah, so we'll introduce our special guest of the evening, Nick Moore, the SEC attorney, who is our special guest.
Yes, like we've already said, Lee and I have worked with Nick many times. We are currently working with Nick. We've learned so much from him, and he's been such an excellent, helpful partner for us. So we're really excited for you guys to glean some wisdom from him tonight. But yeah, Nick, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I'm in Atlanta. So I'm located where your new deal is, which is exciting for us. We own a title company, and I always like to see the Georgia deals come in, because then we really can do the one-stop shop. But I live here in Atlanta. I work downtown. I've got 2 young boys and a wife and a beautiful home. We live in Marietta, which is a suburb about 30 minutes north of the city. And I've been doing this for about 9 years. I've been in commercial real estate in a law firm setting for 12 years. I clerked before law school. Always wanted to do the corporate law thing. Property was not high on my love list in law school, which is crazy, because I am recognized as a real property and real estate attorney. Some fun facts for me, just to give you an idea of at least how my peers perceive my abilities. Just a couple of weeks ago, in fact, maybe just 1 week ago, I was selected for the 4th year in a row as a Georgia super lawyer for the corporate business and real estate sections. And so we don't get a lot of accolades out here. There's not a ton of marketing that you can do with respect to kind of recognition and things. And so that was big for me in my practice and for me and my family. And it's amazing how many people look that stuff up and they'll reach out to you directly. But my referrals comprise the most new business for me in my practice. And obviously I have Lee and Megan to thank for a lot of that as well. You have sent some high quality individuals to reach out on their
I was going to
multifamily
ask you, sorry to step on you. I was going to ask you what's the qualification for a super lawyer?
Tape,
So they say it's like a proprietary, so I didn't pay anything. So it wasn't one of those, fortunately. They say, you get voted on. So there'll be like a ballot, and you propose names, I guess. You nominate people whose work you've experienced and respect, and they put together a list of the people that you can vote on. And then so I'm under 40. Yeah, I mean, I have hair like I'm, over 40, or no hair like I'm over 40, but I'm under 40. And so for super lawyers, it's called a rising star. So apparently I'm still on an upward trajectory here. But it's 2.5% the top 2.5% vote getters. And I don't know how many people that comprises. I think there was maybe a dozen attorneys in town that got that accolade. But it's a short list, which is nice, but it's actually voted on by other super lawyers. And so they go research your background and look at the work that you've done in the firm, in the community, et cetera, before they put you on the ballot. So it's a multi-dimensional evaluation, which is great too. It actually feels like an award, not just like, where kind of some of the people reach out on LinkedIn and want you to be featured or something like that. It's it's a real thing.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Glad to hear it wasn't paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they want you to pay after the fact, right? You get all your little stuff that goes along with it and all that. I might have a Nike hat and a Yeti and all the other stuff, but
buy your printed frame certificate and your pen.
And
you need that clock
companies that will solicit you for like plaques and stuff that are completely unrelated, and then they name it something different, but it's like based on that award. It's kind of hokey, but whatever.
Love it. Well, let's dive right in.
Yeah. And we will share all of Nick's contact information in the chat for you to be able to gather during the call. So if you miss any of this, feel free to, just be on the lookout if you don't get this.
Yeah. His contact information is on the screen right now, but we'll also cover it at the end of the presentation. So
yeah,
take it away, Nick.
And on LinkedIn, I can't hide. I'm on LinkedIn and pretty active on there. So look to connect with me on there. Even if you want to connect via email, I definitely encourage on LinkedIn. That way, we can stay in each other's network. But like I said, look, I'm really excited to be here. I've embraced more of the academic as my career's evolved, and we've done more deals, and I've been able to counsel my clients in so many different ways. You guys really get the benefit of me taking an academic approach to this because I love sharing this information. I love what I do, and I love teaching it, right? And so I've worked to kind of pare down or consolidate the delivery of the information so that you can understand it, I think, the most efficiently and the most effectively. So versus inundating you with all of these facts, I've broken it down into certain scenarios, okay, and workflows, if you will, to determine where are you in your transaction. And of course, look, you get the benefit of reaching out to me and just asking me, right? But it's really important as you're structuring your deals to understand how you're putting the deal together, because that can impact underwriting, that can impact the offer that you're making to your broker. I mean, it's one of the most critical decisions. What am I going to be when I buy this property? Okay. And so before we even get to securities, before we even get to 506B and C, which we will, we have to ask ourselves, is a security involved? Okay. And really the assessment is anybody on my team not participating substantively in the operation of the asset? Did they just contribute capital with the expectation of a return? Or are they down here, boots on the ground, underwriting, reviewing due diligence documents, doing property tours, working with contractors for our CapEx, et cetera, right? And so those are a few examples of participating in the deal. And so let's say there's 4 of you, for example, okay? And you're all going to participate. You all have a role. Substantive. You have meetings. You guys are you're so fired up about this asset. You guys are just underwriting. We got spreadsheets flying across. We're tweaking formulas. We're looking at due diligence documents. I'm looking at the financial stuff. I'm looking at the service contracts. I'm looking at these leases, right? And everybody's participating. There's no security involved. SEC has no jurisdiction. They couldn't do anything if they wanted to. Okay. So in that situation, we're going to work really probably through an LLC. We're going to have an operating agreement. The four of you in my example, okay, will be partners in this joint venture, and there's no security involved. And so the hallmark said slightly differently. If somebody is earning a profit or is contributing capital with the expectation of a profit, and they're not exerting any effort in generating that profit, that's a security. So if there are
Oh, actually,
4 or
I know
5
that
of
you have a slide for this. Let me get you to that slide.
probably there's a slide for that.
There we go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. So is it a security? Right. So we just went through no, kind of backed our way in a little bit, right? You know, here again, we're going to work out of an operating agreement. All of you will be constituent members of the LLC and expressed in the OA. You'll have rights and responsibilities. And the more that you can prepare on the front end for these responsibilities and obligations and rights, et cetera, the more evolved your operating agreement will be. And when a scenario crops up, the more specifically your operating agreement will speak to that particular issue. And so if you go pull an operating agreement online and it's not tailored for real estate, it's not tailored for multifamily, it's not tailored for joint venture, then it's not even really as good as, you know, the paper that it's printed on or the $30 you pay to Rocket Lawyer or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah, it is
So-
so important to understand exactly how your deal is structured, especially if you own it in an LLC, because it's not like if you were used to doing smaller stuff and you own it with a partner as a tenant in common. Like, it's completely different. And you know, you got to know what
Exactly.
happens if scenarios arise. Like, it could actually happen. It's not just some legal jargon that you just go through because people tell you need to. Like, there's
Well, that's right.
consequences.
Same thing with
Steps in
our
the
PSA,
process.
same thing with all of our documents, right?
Yep.
This stuff has happened before. That's why we have a paragraph for it. It
Right.
doesn't mean that all this stuff is going to hit and you're going to invoke every provision of every operating agreement that you ever publish, you know, or that you ever execute. It's that this is, remember, and hopefully I picked the words correctly in my first go here, but I generally look at if the magnitude is great, but the probability of it happening is small, okay, I generally put it in the operating agreement or I put it in the contract.
Yeah.
If the probability of it happening is great, but the impact is small, I want it in the operating agreement. Because if it has a huge impact, we want to prepare for that, because if it hits like catastrophic health insurance, we want it to be there, right? Okay. Same thing. If we know this is probably going to be hit, like the title stuff, look, that's going to be in there every single time. We need that. It may not, the implication may not be huge because there's a lot of refundability mechanisms that we put in the PSA, or we need capital contributions to establish capital accounts in our operating agreement, stuff like that, that if you left out, like a CPA would be okay, but it is an integral part of creating the books and records of the company. And so we put it in there. And so that's what I go through. And when people propose things to me, I evaluate, is the magnitude of this hitting and not being spoken on huge? If so, then I think we provide for it. Or, hey, even though the implication may not be huge, if this is something that's almost surely going to hit, I think we provide for it. Just so when it almost invariably or inevitably happens, we've got the verbiage to prepare for that. And so you need a tailored, to Megan's point, you need a tailored joint venture operating agreement that's for the purpose of owning and operating real estate because of the specific responsibilities that we delineate in that document. Okay.
Absolutely.
Got to cover it all.
Right.
Every single thing.
Let's
right.
digress to the security, right? Let's go. We have the potatoes. Let's get some steak. All right. So once we determine, okay, that we're not a joint venture, all right, let's say we've got, and let's put some numerical terms on it. So let's say we have six people operating now. Okay.
Yep.
Conventional wisdom is, oh, I only have 6 people, I can be a joint venture. No. Go ahead and just purge that out of your mind. The SEC is not like, oh, there's only 6 people in there, you're good. Yeah, go ahead, whatever you're doing. It doesn't work like that. Okay. Once the perception is that somebody has contributed capital solely and exclusively with the expectation of returning, of receiving a distribution or a return on that capital, and they're not contributing to the company, a security exists. And the SEC is abundantly clear that you either qualify for an exemption or you register the security. Okay, so Section 4A2 of the Securities Act of 1933 and Reg D provides that exemption. 506B and 506C are ways to demonstrate, okay, that you have a private placement. By virtue of checking off, okay, all of these boxes that the SEC has provided us with respect to the 506B and C offering, we can demonstrate that we have produced a private placement. Because 4A2 says, to the extent it's a private placement and there's securities issued not to the general public, and just go ahead and purge the whole, but you can advertise with 506C, not the same thing. Okay, public market is like exchange. There's a market for these securities. Okay, something like that. Not like, hey, I'm advertising to people about my private placement memorandum, and it sounds counterintuitive, but they run concurrently. Okay. Now, once that determination is made that somebody is just there for the profits and they're not going to participate, and let's be honest, if you've had more than one LP, you don't want a bunch of cooks in the kitchen. You want to operate the property. The LPs put the capital in and the reliance and faith in you, right? Based on hopefully your experience and your ability to bring success to a project and putting their capital with you, and they're fine it being a security. And that's when we go to determine whether, based on our network, what exemption is best for us. Okay. And so most offerings are 506B, as in boy, offerings. Okay. There's a significant higher number of 506B offerings with private placements than there are 506C. And the reason being is most people are actually raising money through their network, through people first, 1 degree of separation, first person experiences and relationships. Okay. And so that helps them overcome the pre-existing relationship that we see there in that first bullet point. Okay. Now, you have to have the pre-existing and a substantive relationship. I'll get to that definition in a moment. And that applies to the non-accredited and the accredited investors. I've had some people that are like, oh, that's just for the non-accredited. Like, no. If it's a 506B, everybody has to have the pre-existing substantive relationship. Okay. Yep. And of course, we covered that briefly in that opening question. Okay. But with that, so the pre-existing is that it preceded the solicitation of the offering. Okay. It doesn't mean like I had to know them before I got my offering together. It's that you knew them substantively. Again, we'll define that in a moment, before their investment was solicited. Okay. Substantive is a qualitative analysis. It's, do you know this person well enough, not long enough, although that's a component of it, right? Generally, to know somebody well enough, you will have to have been around them long enough. But you can play golf with somebody and learn more about them than somebody you've been around the gym with, conversationally for 6 months. I mean, it just depends on the extent of your dialogue. But the substantive component is that you know that person well enough, that you know that they understand the investment, they understand how distributions are made, they understand how management fees are paid, the economics of the deal, and the asset class into which their money's being placed. They don't have to be an expert operator. Nobody's holding them to that threshold. But when somebody doesn't know, and you need to be very careful, because those are the people that can pretty much stand up and raise their hand and say, look, this offering went south and they told me I was sophisticated, but I didn't feel like it. And maybe I'm not sophisticated. And then of course they're going to turn the mic to you to explain yourself. And so look, that's why what you guys are doing is so critical in so many different ways. And I mean, Lee and Megan, in these educational, academic, sort of shepherding context, because you're cultivating not only substantive relationships to the extent these people, the people that you're shepherding want to invest in your deals, but you're creating sophisticated investors for them to evaluate other deals. Because we're going to have a few deals a year, maybe more, but there could be other opportunities where capital could be placed anywhere, and you're educating them and helping liberate them from from their financial binds, or help introduce them to this wonderful asset class, by virtue of doing all of this. And so build that rapport with them, educate them, coach them. And so if they do invest in you or generate other interest and bring other people along, that substantive component is there, and then the pre-existing component is there before you solicit.
Okay. So I have a question. We do both 506B and 506C syndications, which means that we can work with non-accredited investors and accredited investors that we have the pre-existing relationship with. Let me just run through what we do. What we do is we have a 3 separate phone call conversation that we have with every single investor that we have in our database, as many as humanly possible, in order to be able to build that substantive relationship in a 3 phone call. The first one is basically to get a gauge of where, are they interested at all? Let's get to know each other very basically on a top level. The next one, we dive deep into our track record, the deals we've done before in the past, the process of the investment from the start to the end. And then the final conversation is, let's get to know them better. So we kind of put all of our cards on the table for them. And then we get to know them on the last call, where the last call we go through their current financial situation. What's their history of investing in deals before in the past, or real estate, or stocks, or bonds, or whatever. And then after we have all of that, those 3 separate phone calls, I understand that at that point, they know us, they know the process and understand the deal, and we understand who they are, and not the color of their skin or their hair,
family tree,
or where they live, but their financial background.
Yeah, and that they understand, what this type of investing is and what they're getting themselves into. So we take those 3 conversations to answer those questions and feel them out just as much as they're feeling us out, to make sure that they understand what's going on.
And during those 3 phone calls, taking copious notes in our CRM system in order to be able to backlog and reference those to make sure we have the back end showing that we have the established relationship built with that individual investor. Would you say that's enough, Nick?
Well, I always want more, right? No, but I think that's, I think it's, I want 50 phone calls. I want 3 years of weekly breakfasts. Look, yes, I think that passes muster. Remember, it's qualitative. And you could conceivably, again, if you're able to spend enough time with somebody, in a day or 2, right? It doesn't matter about the longevity. It's more, again, the qualitative nature of the interaction, right, and of the relationship. Obviously, I think it's great to have multiple contacts with them to demonstrate that. So I think your practice is great. I do. I think it works. I think as long as you're documenting, and again, you're able to synthesize their needs and understand sort of their risk appetite and what is their risk profile in terms of investing and things of that nature. And look, I think the best operators don't take every interested LP. Now some do, okay, because at the end of the day, they're working on their raise, and that's what they do. There's a certain level you get to when you're pretty selective because your offerings are highly marketable, right? And so it's easier to either take a longer time to build that rapport, or just say, hey, listen, we're comfortable understanding that maybe you don't have the full context here. And so my only challenge to you guys is, if you're presented with an opportunity where you feel it's in your best interest to pass on them for a particular offering, that you're doing that. right? And you're not saying like, hey, we just had 3 calls, we're good, because I've seen investors sue operators and they don't need a ton of context and background and all of that to get some attorney fired up to sue you. And you've got to defend yourself. And so the more substantive it is, the more qualitative those interactions are, the more you're going to bolster your defense that, that you believe them to be sophisticated and that the relationship was pre-existing. So love the program. Love the program. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a couple other questions in the chat I just want to get to. And then I think we should dive into maybe the scenarios. How does one prove that they're accredited? What is an accredited investor?
So an accredited investor, it's not a fluid definition, but it's evolving. Okay. Right now, it's an individual who earns $200,000 or more per year for the previous 2 years, and the reasonable expectation that they're going to earn that in the current year. So in this case, it would be $200,000 in 21 and 22, with the reasonable expectation that you're going to earn $200,000 in 2023. Okay. The other is $1 million net worth, exclusive of, meaning not including, the equity or your primary residence. None of that. So think liquidity, stocks and bonds, other real estate holdings that are non-primary residence. And you also can't liquidate a line of credit or anything like that to get you to the $1 million net worth out of your primary residence. Our documents contemplate that as well, just representing that that's not that you didn't do that, basically. Okay. The other is like a family office, 5 million or more in assets. An entity is an accredited investor singly, to the extent that all one bad apple spoils the bunch, but all constituent members of that LLC are each accredited. Okay. And so what we're doing in the verification process in a 506C is we're providing the documents that substantiate one of those prongs, right? We just have to qualify in one way. For household is $300,000 or more. But generally our accredited investors are single individuals earning the 200,000 or more. They have the $1 million net worth. It's kind of one of the two, but there is some proposals out there to increase that. And the latest iteration that was promulgated last month, may have been the end of July, but in any event, within the last 60 days, where every 5 years, the SEC is required to evaluate the definition, and that's evaluate the definition of accredited investor. Doesn't mean they're going to change, but they're required to evaluate it. And one would think they probably want to evolve the definition. And so some of my colleagues believe that it's going to go from 200,000 to significantly more than that. The reason that an accredited investor is accredited, other than qualifying as such, is that you have the resources and the financial sophistication to the extent you can't decide on your own, that you have the resources to retain an expert or professional, right, to review these on your behalf and provide you a synopsis of what the offering is. And so we've proven that maybe $200,000 isn't actually that much money after all, and that somebody could have $200,000 a year and be financially illiterate. And of course,
I know plenty of people, real estate agents specifically, who make $200,000 a year and are basically financially illiterate, driving around in a leased car that cost them $1,000 or more. It's crazy. 200 is not that much.
Nothing showy like a broker
in a certain place. Like if you earn $200,000 a year and you live in Manhattan, like you're still the janitor. Pretty sure the janitor of a high school earns $200,000 a year in Manhattan or like San Francisco. I I understood, and I had an investor come to me. She said, I don't know if I'm accredited. I'm not really sure. I was like, I asked her those specific questions, but then I asked, well, what do you do for a living? She answered, no, I don't make 200 yet. No, I don't have $1 million in net worth. I'm like, well, where do you work? And she's like, I work for a financial company I won't name names, but one of the biggest ones in the country, and it's in here in St. Louis. And I said, well, do you have an SEC license? And she says, yes, I have a Series 7 license. And that qualifies you as an accredited investor as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to explain this slide, Nick.
So that's that. Yes. So those are limited, but I mean, yeah, very few of your, and that, I mean, it applies. Very few people are going to have that license and not know whether or not they're accredited. Like if you have a Series 7 or 63 or 65, even a 66, I feel like those are even on the FINRA exam to get your license in the first place. So I actually kind of find it troubling that, and that's a perfect example. I mean, but here, even in the rules moving forward, she would be an accredited investor, and they're actually going to include other certain professions that can qualify you. But for our Main Street investors, it's going to be an income or net worth qualification. If they don't meet those, then that's generally when well, look, our subscription agreement is going to provide for how, right? That's our purchaser questionnaire. Okay. And so generally that's going to spell out how you qualify in a 506B offering. Again, once you have the verification, it's really belt and suspenders approach to do the purchaser questionnaire in conjunction with the verification. I recommend doing both and not dispensing with one in lieu of the other. But yeah, there's a couple other limited ways to get it. There's a trust scenario that's a 7-figure net worth as well, or assets in the trust. But again, your Main Street, we're coming in as joint tenants with right of survivorship, or I'm just an individual, or my LLC, etc. You're going to be proving it through income and net worth 95+% of the time. Oh, and then knowledgeable employee. Let me unpack that briefly. Again, very limited use, but let's say you have a 506C offering and you're the analyst and you just graduated from University of Georgia, so you're probably brilliant. But you haven't made a ton of money yet. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you're the analyst and you help them underwrite these deals and go through the modeling and all of that. And you help qualify the property, or at least prepare all the financial information for the decision makers to qualify the property for acquisition. You would be deemed a knowledgeable employee. And so if you had some capital to invest, you could do that as a knowledgeable employee. And of course, it also pertains. I mean, I have countless clients who themselves are not accredited and they're running 506C offerings. And so in that case, you're a knowledgeable employee as well. And so by virtue of that, you're deemed accredited. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up is like, hey, if you are a GP on a deal that's a 506C, like you're intimately involved, even if you're not. Yeah.
Here's another one. And while I'm thinking about it, so I don't, it's probably not the right time to introduce it, but it's on my mind, and it's something that I want you guys to know, and I want our investors to know when it comes to the actual solicitation component of a security. Because obviously solicitation, to solicit, is a verb. It's an affirmative action, right? It is taking a step, okay, in the direction of enticing somebody, encouraging, and then giving them the opportunity to invest with you. Mm-hmm. So if you do that, and they have a friend, and the friend is intrigued, and they're like, man, I've got 50 grand that I've been looking to invest somewhere. I would love to put it in this deal. But wait a second, I don't know them, and I don't have the substantive pre-existing relationship. You didn't solicit them. If they approach you and say, hey, listen, I got wind of your offering and I'm interested because Becky showed me this thing and I think it's phenomenal, and I've got $50,000 ready, I'll wire before Becky does. All right. That's not solicitation. You didn't take the affirmative step to solicit them. Now, if you go to Becky and you're like, hey, put me in touch with some of your friends, and she's like, hey, here's the 4 that are interested, and then you again take that affirmative step, then that puts you back in the realm of solicitation. But where they in effect solicit you to invest in your offering, the solicitation component does not apply generally.
Okay.
Interesting.
In which case, can you then establish the relationship, the substantial relationship at that point? That's the goal, as
Yes,
quickly as
for
possible.
purposes of the next offering, being able to solicit them. You don't have to do
Okay.
anything in the subject offering, right?
Mm.
You don't have to do anything there because you didn't solicit them. But to the
Okay.
extent, but to the extent you have our next deal coming down the line and you want to avail yourselves to them, or have them avail themselves to you, you need to establish that substantive, really the substantive component at that point. Hopefully you're establishing some dialogue with them as a condition to their subscription, right?
Yes.
Just
Of
to
course.
go ahead and perpetuate your program that you have. I wouldn't deviate from that, but yeah, you need to establish that for future offerings.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
So with that being said, I think you have some examples of this. Let's jump into, let's see. Here we go. There's
Yeah.
Becca you were talking about.
So-
Yeah. Tom and Becca.
I know that's like my go-to example. So Tom, Becca, and Mark have determined that they want their investors to invest directly into their opportunity by acquiring limited partnership units, but they aren't sure whether to form a 506B or 506C offering. What they do know, they know the persons whom they want to invest in their deal really well, and that's important. They only need about 10 investors, but are unsure of the financial capability of the investors and wonder if that has any implication. They don't need to advertise the deal since they've already identified their investor. Which type of offering is most suitable for their deal?
I think this one's pretty
Obviously, I
straightforward.
mean,
Yeah.
you guys
I'm
can
gonna say
take
B.
it, you guys can take this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
I mean,
would be
that's pretty straightforward
a B. I mean, but with a caveat, and I put some stuff in here for conversation points. It says they're unsure of the financial capability of the investors. Now, obviously, that's the purchaser questionnaire. That's our 3 call, or follow-up call. But we're wanting to investigate what their financial capability is to determine whether they're going to count toward your 35. You're limited to 35 investors. Now, there is this qualification about on a rolling 90-day basis, but generally in the context of a commercial real estate transaction timeline, you don't have a bunch of 90 days to mess with. You have one. You have one 90-day,
Yep.
and you need to complete your raise in there. If it extends beyond that, you can reach out to me and we can look at the facts of your offering to determine whether the rolling basis would apply, where you might be eligible to accept more than 35 non-accredited investors in your single integrated offering. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
Let's
have
go
to
on to
pay
the
for
next
that.
one.
All right, Tom, Beck, and Mark. Okay, so same facts as before. They want to know what they need. What do they know? They know some of the persons whom they want to invest in their deal really well, 5. Others they know fairly well, 5, and a couple of whom they've never met, 5. Total 15. But want to see if they can offer them units just in case the folks they know cannot commit. They only need about 10 investors, but are unsure of the financial capability of the investors. They don't need to advertise the deals since they've identified their investors. So we've got 5 really well. So would you say those are fair game?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but you don't know if they're accredited or not.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that same bullet will apply. So we'll carry that one over. So I would say, look, for purpose of this example, I'd say the ones you know really well, those are going to be fine, right? Those are your 5 buddies, pickleball, kids playground.
We know that they're good for it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. The people that you know fairly well, okay, this is where you would want to just explore that relationship a little bit more, examine it, make sure that you have enough substantivity there that it incorporates the financial component of the relationship, right? You understand their portfolio, their sophistication to understand these matters. That's what you're exploring. The other stuff about the know, like, and trust, which is sort of the trinity of establishing that pre-existing substantivity, is probably going to be there. Okay, so just make sure you cover the financial piece too, because that's often left off. It's like, oh yeah, I know Tom, but Tom never asked me about my financial. He just knew I had 50K and put it in there. Take it a step beyond and go get, not uncomfortably, but discuss financials from the perspective of, do they understand this, so that they don't go off and, if in the first missed distribution, they, cry wolf or something. Okay.
Right.
All right. And then a couple they've never met. Now, obviously, this is where we're going to bring them through our program and establish that substantivity. There's no guys, there's no introduction of any current deals. I mean, it's really got to be pretty benign. And you really don't want to talk about any current deals. Like, we don't want to talk about our new offering in Atlanta yet. We're bringing them through organically, and we're talking through, maybe we're doing some coaching, maybe we're doing some educating, and only and unless and until, okay, they become, they demonstrate that capacity and competency, understanding all of that, should you, proceed to the next step or solicit their investment. Okay.
Mhm.
So with that, what offering do we think? I think it's obvious after I just chatted on for 5 minutes.
I'd go with a C personally. Just
Well,
you
well,
have the
says they
established
don't need to
relationship.
advertise, but they could. No, you're not,
Yeah.
you're not wrongly, and it's important because sometimes I ask my clients the same thing. I'm like, look, if everybody's accredited, you can just get them to verify, then just roll with that, and then the rules
Yep.
are pretty much off the table on 506C, short of certain disclosure requirements, right? But I've also heard that a lot of accredited investors, for whatever reason, gripe about having to prove their accreditation status. And so if they are close relationships, again, Lee, I think you're wise in considering the 506C here.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't matter how well you know them. Just prove that you're accredited, basically.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
Call your accountant.
that's it.
and
Then the
have them sign a
qualitative
letter.
analysis is replaced with a quantitative analysis. Do you qualify as a credit investor? Prove it. And that's a condition to subscription, and your aces, and you just, file that away. And then you can still reach out with them, pull them through your program. And then they're available for your next 506B offering. They'll always be there
Yep.
for C. And remember, so some people have asked me as well, important fact, whether somebody can lose an accreditation status. It's at the time of subscription. So if I do the 200K a year for the last 2 years at the reasonable expectation here, but then in 2024, I get a medical injury or some issue and I didn't make any money, I don't we don't have to go register our offering because Tom, sorry if there's a Tom on this call, because Tom can't work, right? So just know that it's at the
Come back with
time.
invested capital or no. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what about this, Nick? So, obviously we said 506C because, hey, what if you run out of people and
And if
you can't close the deal, you haven't raised enough money. What about going from a 506B from the start and then transitioning it to a C?
yeah.
So you can do that. I recommend having a very clear line of demarcation between the two offerings. It is possible. You have to comport perfectly with each exemption, but there's no rule that precludes one over the other. The risk would be that somebody who caught wind of the advertised 506C offering is then pulled into your 506B offering. So you just got to cut the head off the snake of the 506B offering. When it's closed, it's closed. My personal opinion, there's no action letter or advisement. The SEC doesn't have a chat bar. That'd be nice, right? You can't really ask. You gotta just cut it off. You have to go to the next exemption. You're either B, and you get, I guess where I was going, that my mind trailed off for a moment because it's getting late and I'm a dad. Get their money and then you can convert. Get their money and then you can convert. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't do they filled out the documents, but they haven't wired yet. Guess what, guys? Anybody can fill out the documents. If you've operated for more than 15 minutes, people will fill out the documents and never wire. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, we've done that on previous deals. Sorry, Nick.
Had to cut people out.
Yeah,
because signed.
We did our last syndication. We did a 506B to a C,
Mhm.
and honestly, it was good to create the sense of urgency for the non-accredited people that we had with a sophisticated relationship, because we were like, hey, at this date, if you haven't wired your funds, you're out.
Yep.
You can't be in the deal anymore.
Next one. Sorry.
So that really helps, with the sense of urgency. Now it is twice as much work.
You're
but
fired.
yeah, your ass.
unless they're accredited. And at that point,
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
it's a good
Unless they're-
policy. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and at that point, then now you got to go over here and you got to verify. There was a
Yeah.
question in the chat about how to prove that for our
Mhm.
operators in the building. Really just use the third party online service. I mean, look, the CPA letter is fine, the attorney letter is fine, but who wants to wait on another human being to give you something to make your investment? Okay. Just go to a third party, Google it, get the verification, send it over. Syndication Pro, I think Cash Flow Portal may have it. InvestNext, some of these actually have links for you to go verify that, and they make it very seamless. And so I recommend that across the board.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Sam just dropped a link to Verify Investor. This is a certified company that we've used before to verify accreditation status.
Yep.
It's really quick. They take 24 hours typically. So, you know,
I think it's $60.
And it's probably what, maybe, yeah, I was about to say, it's like, I was thinking 75, but even
Yeah.
better, right?
yeah,
And the investor pays it.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
they
Just
pay
the
for the
cost of doing
cost. And
business. You're not
it's good for
incurring that as
90
the
days.
operator.
They can use it for multiple deals, you know.
What other things work though? A CPA letter you mentioned. Is there anything else?
Well,
that...
remember, so the SEC just said reasonable steps to verify. So whatever that looks like. I mean, honestly, I think I've had people show proof of funds with a bank letter that they had $1 million in their account.
Yep. That's
Hey,
good
are you
enough,
worth $1
too.
million? Yeah. You know, like
Yeah.
here's my Wells Fargo checking account. Like we're good.
That makes it easy.
You know, who doesn't
That
have
makes
that?
it real easy.
Proof of funds.
Yeah.
Well, at least
Yeah.
you know they got the funds ready to wire over if they're showing $1 million in their checking account. Those are
Whoever
those are
that
the
is,
people we're all
we have a 144 unit available to be
Exactly.
credited to invest. It's in Atlanta in a wonderful Path of Progress neighborhood.
Yeah. Hey, we're running a little long. It's almost at the hour now. But we have some more content to go through. So if you guys want to hang on, we're gonna just keep talking. But we do want to thank you guys for being here tonight. But yeah, just wanted to give you guys that warning.
Yeah,
you
I'm
know,
a chatterbox, so
guys.
I also get tangential, but it's just because I want to get all of this out and into your minds.
Yeah. I want
Okay, well, let's do a couple
back.
more because I've gotta go lay,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
For
family.
sure.
kids
I did
down.
I wanted to get into some of these syndication or joint venture scenarios that you had. And just talk through a couple of those to determine if you should even do a syndication or not. So
That's right.
No, we had
So
a
same
scenario
facts.
once where we literally had 6 people on the team, but we determined 2 of them were going to be 100% passive. So we ended up having to do a 506B. But, you know, literally perfect example, 6-person
And
syndication.
You know, Lee, that's important because, and look, I'm a human being at the end of the day. I'm a partner at my firm. I get to control, you know, the cost of my documents and my services. And I've been, you know, I've got a bleeding heart. So when people reach out and they're like, look, man, I want to do the right thing and I want to qualify for the exemption here. It's only a couple of people, or they don't usually say only a couple. They'll be like, hey, it's, you know, we've got, you know, I'll ask how much is the raise or how many people are contributing. And if it's like, if you know they're just doing the right thing and you just want to celebrate that. And I generally discount the services when it's like, hey, this is kind of an emergency, you know, because it can be cost prohibitive to, you know, do full blown syndication on stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you want the peace of mind to know that you did it right. So if that's ever the case, definitely reach out to me and let me know if you need my help converting kind of from a joint venture to syndication. And so here, let's do a couple of examples real quick. So we have Tom, Becca, and Mark. They meet Omar, who has access to capital and is already invested in numerous multifamily real estate deals, who joins their team as a partner after an offer is accepted. So this actually, well, I'll just continue with it, is accepted for purpose of raising capital. All right. So we've got Omar. He's after an offer is accepted. So he wasn't really on the team at the outset, underwriting and stuff like that. And he's really raising capital. So with that context, as stated above, they have an offer accepted and have now gotten their target under contract. However, based on the purchase price and loan amount, they'll need a total of $4 million and will partner with Omar, who will help them raise the additional capital needed to close the deal. Omar said that he wants $5,000 for each investor that he brings to the partners. Can we do that? Can we pay Omar?
Red flag.
Only if he is a broker, licensed broker dealer, can you pay him directly for raising money for your deal. From what I understand.
Yes, you are 95% correct. You actually aren't allowed to give him GP percentage just for raising capital either. So that's just a payment in kind versus a cash transaction. Obviously, a cash transaction is easy. You just look at that and know that it's a bright line in propriety. He needs to have substantive roles with the GP outside of raising capital. And the SEC even goes as far as saying that the compensation of Omar cannot be tied to his capital raising efforts. They imply that. They say that his compensation has to be tied to his non-capital raising duties. So I think maybe that's apples to apples, but in any event, we can't just. So what we do is we don't memorialize anything. Okay. You guys have your handshake deals. You have your understandings. We can't really memorialize this stuff because the more you memorialize, the more it looks like brokerage. And it's really a tough place to be. And I'm hopeful that the SEC comes up with some, some exemptions from the brokerage rules that are pretty rigid. There were some proposals, but nothing's been promulgated yet. Okay. So here, yeah, sorry, Omar, we can't do that. We could associate you on our GP, but you'll have to do things other than raise capital, and the consideration for your compensation isn't going to be entirely tied to that. There'll be other things that you'll be doing that for which you'll receive compensation. The SEC says that so the reason that they need you to operate with the GP substantively outside of capital raising is that it's not brokerage when you are perceived to be operating on behalf of the issuer. Okay.
That makes sense.
So because basically it's just you raising capital for your deal. But the less that you do for your company and you're just raising capital, the more it looks like brokerage. That makes sense. So you have to have these deals to make it look like you're affiliated with the issuer and you're just raising capital to fund your endeavors that incidentally require capital for the funding. Okay.
Right. So if you're going to be a GP, you have to have a job, and the job can't just be capital raising. It has to be something that contributes actively to the deal after close.
Signing on debt.
And I'll tell you this, you'll know when you have a licensed broker dealer linking up your equity. You will make no mistake when that person enters because of how much they charge to line up equity. You think debt's expensive these days, okay? Equity, now debt, depending on your interest rate, okay, and I've seen some big ones, right? But generally equity is much more expensive. Plus that brokerage fee is generally 1 to 3 points in this industry. It can be more than that depending on the broker dealer that you're going through. But if you're raising $5 million and there's a 3-point fee on that, I mean, there's $150,000 that you pay just to get that. And that's not really coming from your investors. That's probably coming from you, or you're sacrificing acquisition fees, or it is coming out of your investor returns and they're reduced because before your project's even made $1, you're out $150,000. Okay. That's a lot of money. I don't care who you are. So
for real.
So you'll know when there's a broker deal.
And the people that they bring usually don't bring one big check and usually very big demands. The clients of the broker dealers.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we're not changing too much in our operating agreement, depending on the nature and quality of whoever they're linking. Maybe they have some say in your operating agreement. Of course, our garden variety syndication guys, we relegate the limited partners to a very silent position. Now, you can't take any actions volitionally or on your own accord that's adverse to the interests of your investors without their consent. Generally, it's an 80% threshold. But short of that, they're not voting on anything. I mean, they're just along for the ride. And so we put those protections in there as those investor-friendly measures so that they'll stay in and actually invest in your deal, and you can't just, just unilaterally amend the OA and abridge,
Yeah.
or vitiate the.
So we had a question earlier about like, what's a way that you can get on to the GP side as a entry level GP or whichever. And, those jobs are, the things that you're doing throughout the course of the deal, and not just capital raising for the beginning. And, those things are, hey, are you signing on the debt?
Mm-hmm.
Are you actively participating in the asset management? Are
Managing
you
the CapEx projects.
Yeah, CapEx projects. Are you overseeing unit turns or budgets, or
Filing the taxes
yep,
every
filing
year.
taxes, or even putting together investor relations, like putting together newsletters, communications with the investors. There's all kinds of things that you can do to contribute. We've had community relations, folks that help with community inside of the property, or even just in the county that we're located in, getting tied into the government offices there, building those relationships. So I mean, there's roles you can play. You just have to make sure that you can have a substantive part, and that your team agrees that it's a substantive role.
Yeah, and that the value of that role equals their returns for their time and effort. That's our goal line and approach. Is we want to bring on team members who bring value for not just being able to raise money, because we all raise money on our team, but you have to bring value in a separate way besides that. You can't just raise money. It's just not able to be done. And if your version of being compensated for your time as well, I'll show up to one meeting every 6 months, well, you're not meeting that threshold, and that's not the expectation, especially if someone takes a sizable portion of the deal.
Yeah.
And we've even put in documents where that can be a violation of the operating agreement, is skipping these meetings and relegating yourself to a more passive position, because it could be serious. So be serious about it. Everybody needs a chance, and so it's just working in these networks and finding people who are hungry. I've had 2 or 3 operators reach out in the last couple of weeks that were like, yeah, I'm working with people from my mastermind. We've never done a deal together before, but here's what we're putting together. It's just awesome to see that synergy. But they're taking a chance on each other, and we've got to provide for some of those things in the operating agreement. And I'm a business owner myself and have been for quite a long time. But I've seen more than most of my newer operators. And so I provide the documents based on my wisdom and experience. And that's helpful to kind of, put real terms around your business relationship. But get in the network, get with people who are willing to take a chance, and then go joint venture, do something smaller. If it's a larger project, it's going to be tougher for you to really contribute substantively. And so kind of earn your stripes a little bit would be my advice. But if you can take down a 310 unit Class A property in your first swipe, more power to you. Just use me to do it.
Yeah. That's exactly how Lee got started, honestly.
I'll buy that building with you. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I started with the stepping stone. So it was small to JV deals, to a B, to a JV, and then C. So those stepping stones.
Mhm.
Not everybody can be Joe Fairless, right? Like first big deal you do is 150 plus units or whatever.
Yeah.
When people ask me like what would I do if I could go back, I would have invested passively first to learn alongside someone who's actively investing,
and a good operator, right, Lee? Like with a good operator that knows their stuff and does reports and those things that hopefully help you, that you want to emulate, because some people are like, look, guys, I've seen passive investors invest into not successful operators, and then they have a horrible perception of the industry and investing and alternative asset investment and stuff. So, yeah, Find
We
a good
find that
operator, invest passively. I love that as a first step for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we find that the barrier between one and the other is not just the success of the business or the deal, it's the communication that happens during the ownership period. It's the monthly newsletters, the willingness to answer phone calls. Like Ron is on this, he's one of our investors, and Ron has my personal cell phone number, and Ron gets his monthly emails. I hope Ron gets his emails. In fact, I'm pretty sure we confirmed it. That's one of the things, like the communication along the way, even if it's bad news, you need to know that's, it's not just the success of the deal that can put the bad taste in the mouth of the investor, potentially. It's also the miscommunication or lack of communication. And we try to be the opposite of that, the over communicator in times, or the,
For sure.
like, hey, we bought a golf cart. Here's a picture of the golf cart.
Here's Lee driving the golf cart.
Whatever.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna throw
Well, hey
up your
guys,
contact.
listen, just real quick. I got the text from the wife, and we all know what that means. So
We crossed the time threshold. We appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This has been
Nick's
fun.
contact information is here. We're gonna add it into the chat. We'll run through our kind of slides, let everybody else stay on for a couple minutes, but everybody will have Nick's contact information in the chat so they can reach out when it's time for their deal. Nick, before you go, when should someone reach out to you in their process? When do you want, let's say, there are several active investors here in the room, when would you want someone to reach out to you?
Well, first of all, this has been awesome. This was very engaging for me. I enjoyed it. You guys are great hosts. So to the extent we have some opportunities ahead of us with this group, which I suspect we will, reach out to me early just to establish that connection so that your email's familiar. I mean, I get hundreds of emails a day, for sure. And so, being able to see your name and put it with, this webinar, things like that is really important. And let me know what you're interested in, what you're doing, and, how you think I might, be able to help you. And we could schedule, a meeting together at some point and try to connect a little bit further. It usually looks more like, hey, Nick, we got an accepted LOI, or we're submitting an LOI and we're highest and best offer, something like that. You want that guidance, particularly if you're on the newer operational side, reach out early so that we can, help you even with your LOI and get that thing in shape. And then you can go out and shoot it to every broker, in America, and let them know who you are and what you're about, and know that you have the confidence of a good LOI. And that might even be something, guys, that you may want to think about. Lee, I feel like you've shared one before, but that would be something that I think your peers and colleagues could benefit from as well, because I know you've got a good one. Obviously, we've drafted a ton of contracts on your LOI, and I've never had an issue with them.
That'd be a good future topic.
Yeah,
definitely. So LOI stage, PSA stage, certainly, like, hey, we have an accepted LOI, and let me go ahead and take a crack at the PSA. And we'll transact this thing built on $1 billion or more worth of commercial real estate. Let's put all that wisdom and experience behind it. I don't really back down from any challenge in the transaction, and I lead from the front. We get it done every time. We're not extending, waiting on borrower legal. I can promise you that. So, yeah, just reach out and let's go build that portfolio for you.
heck yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Nick. We'll try to address some of these other questions in the chat, but we'll let Nick go. Appreciate the great session tonight. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
No, this was great. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.
And thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
I appreciate it very much. A couple of you have already reached out to connect on LinkedIn. I appreciate that. I'll connect with you and hope to hear from you very soon.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right. Enjoy your family time.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. Take care, everyone. Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right. Bye. All right. So for those who we have left, let's see if we have anyone. Sorry if we didn't get to the questions and answers so much with Nick. I feel like the whole session was kind of question and answers.
It was
Yeah.
actually kind of
Nick can talk about
interesting.
syndications all day.
Yeah, and I think we only reviewed maybe 5 of his.
Yeah, like 5 of his
20
slides.
slides. He provided us with 20 slides. There was no way we were getting through all of it today.
Yeah.
But really valuable. Nick is awesome. You know, he's helped us through some good times and some bad times, and you always want a strong attorney on your to have your back and writing the legal documents and reviewing and writing contracts for your deals.
Yeah. So Sharuk, I hope I'm saying that right. Sharuk asked, what's a good platform for investor relations?
Yep.
We've used several.
We've actually used the top 3 that
Yeah.
I know of. We've used InvestNext, Cashflow Portal, which is the one we're currently using, and when we've also used Syndication Pro. They all have their pros and cons and cost benefits. We like Cashflow Portal. It's, you know, the user experience, which I think we might pay a little more for, you know, in comparison to other options. But we get a great user experience, and our investors get a great user experience using the Cashflow Portal.
Yeah,
so that's what we've
it's
decided
clean,
to utilize.
it's simple, their support is awesome. You can ACH. So these platforms, they handle the actual raising of the funds, the signing of the subscription docs, all of that stuff, advertising the deal, in addition to doing the investors relations after you close. So they're really comprehensive and they're worth the money
Yeah.
to do.
I wouldn't want to know what it was
I would
like.
not want to have to do like an email list.
Oh yeah, before the internet. Imagine, I mean, they were doing syndications for 100 years now. I mean, imagine doing a syndication and maintaining a relationship with your investors over the mail or fax or phone calls with everyone. It'd be daunting.
Yeah. All right. Next, are we allowed to advertise our capability to syndicate real estate deals if we don't advertise a specific deal and still be a 506B?
Well, it's not a specific deal, so it wouldn't be a 506B. But you can advertise your own self. You know, kind of the rule of thumb is, and the whole reason why we do these, not the whole, but one of the reasons is to be able to create buzz and relationships, build contacts, and then eventually create a separate relationship with each individual investor, as many as humanly possible, establish that substantial relationship, and then they can then invest in our deals.
Yeah.
So
I think
if you're advertising at all a deal, it has to be a C.
Yeah, I think the meat of the question is like, hey, you have a 506B. And you can't go out and tell anybody about it.
No.
But you also want to make sure that people know that you are syndicators and you might have deals if you have a relationship with them. And you can do that, but just know that anybody that you meet during that time period that you're under contract with that 506B doesn't qualify. You can't have them invest in that deal, but in the next deal, you could if you had, because now you've met them as a substantial, they solicited you, or you know, whatever, you guys have linked up before. And Nick touched on that during the brief, is like, hey, like you met them for the purposes of establishing the relationship, not for the purposes of investing in that deal. The next one, they're fair game. So crowdfunding, is it a viable option to attract accredited investors?
Of course. Yeah. Crowdfunding is an amazing new tool in the tool belt for raising capital. I believe the cap is at 5 million. Last I checked, it used to be only 1 million, but they raised it to 5. But if your raise is much higher than 5 million, it's probably not the best option. It might fill a large gap. But yeah, I would recommend utilizing. There's lots of them, like I think like Realty Mogul or something is one. There's a bunch of them out there. So yeah, get in. I think there's a qualification process you have to go through with your deal in order to have them review your deal, make sure you work for them, and vice versa. And then they will allow you to crowdfund your deal through their crowdfunding platform.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. I think that was all of the questions. So real quick, we'll finish out. Thank you guys for bearing with us. you know, like we said, if you've got $50,000 and you're looking to get started, you can invest in the syndication. This is specifically what Lee and I do. And some of our partners who are also on this call,
Mhm.
you know, we put together syndications and we bring on passive partners to buy real estate assets, just like the one in the photo. This is actually one of our assets. It's one of our favorite assets.
Yeah, it's
Um,
actually my favorite property that we own.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful property in
Yeah.
Park Hills, Missouri.
But yeah, it's you know, why start with a junky single family house or a duplex you
Like I did.
spend a year fixing up when you could, you know, own a slice of the pizza and have a 150 plus unit apartment complex under your belt.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to really talk about this with Nick, but you know, this is kind of the structure of that syndication. The property is owned by an LLC, and then that LLC is owned by two other different entities. They're the Class A members who are the passive investors. And then you have the manager LLC, which is owned by the GPs. So any of the active members, they're the ones who are running the business. They're the ones that are running the business plan of the property. They're working with the property management company. They're the ones that are making sure that everything goes according to plan. And the passive investors, they're getting their distribution every quarter.
That's where I want to be.
But the
I wanna be
beautiful
the
thing
passive
is as you can see here, they are owners of the real estate. What does
Yes.
that mean? That means you get to participate in all kinds of wonderful things. Cash flow,
Appreciation.
tax savings specifically.
And you get to stick with doing what you do best, which is your one thing that you do best. You don't need to take on a second job being a landlord, you know, cleaning toilets and leasing units. You can stick and focus to the thing that you do best while partnering with people who are industry experts like ourselves.
Yeah, and I specifically want to say for the tax savings, our next month's webinar is going to be with a cost segregation study company. Our guest David, what is his last name?
It's isn't it Michael? Michael
Oh, is
David.
it Michael?
Yeah, Michael David.
Michael David.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's his name. Forget.
We might have to edit this part of the video out.
Yeah.
But we are meeting with someone from a cost segregation study company who's specifically going to talk about the tax benefits of multifamily real estate investing, and as a passive investor, how you get to participate in that and what sets it apart from other types of investments you might look at, like stock market, other things like that. So
David Mitchell.
I knew it was David.
David Mitchell.
David Mitchell.
Sorry,
Yeah, he's going to be our guest speaker for next month's webinar. So make sure to tune in. And yeah, get in touch with us. That's how, you know, if we don't know you yet, get to know us. We can send you more deals if we know you. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate all of your time here. And you know, the webinar will be available via YouTube within the next day or two. So we'll send out the link to everybody. What are you trying to do?
Paste this link into the chat for
Oh,
our webinar tomorrow.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are interested in learning about our project in Atlanta, the Phoenix Place project, we're doing our webinar tomorrow. Please click the link and RSVP to the webinar. It's going to be an amazing project, and you can learn more about 506C syndication.
All right.
Or A 506C.
Thank you to the handful of you that are left.
Thanks, everybody.
I appreciate you guys hanging out with us.
Bye.
Have a good night.